So the USPSA recently had a post on participation. Amax, did you see this?
I did actually. Got all
What was that?
so I got all wound up on Instagram when I saw this. You can go follow me and you'll see it.
Okay. All right. So Amax got wound up, but I thought this was like super interesting as far as the number of people that participate in each division in USPSA. So what we have here is January 2022 to October 2022 or 2022. And so each of these is not like an individual person. These are entries into a match, and these are all USPSA matches. And it didn't really say in the post, but I'm assuming by the numbers here, this is club matches, sectionals, majors, etc., all together. So as you can see here, like 38% of the people that shot a USPSA match overall, 38% of the shooters is in carry optics division, and that's freaking huge.
Yeah, there's a lot going on this little graphic, and
There are.
that is definitely the standout. How many are participating in carry optics, and how many are participating in carry optics over the other traditional divisions?
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing, because I'm equally amazed at how low the limited and open numbers are.
Yeah. So the limited really surprised me because for the longest time, limited has been like an incredibly popular division in USPSA. The production being 8.5% is kind of wild because, when I started shooting 3-gun 10 years ago, 10 years ago, I got into shooting like a local club match, and production was huge. And that was like when people were shooting EAA witnesses and Glock 34s. And then Ben Steger was like winning everything with a Beretta 92. Like production was huge at the time. It was super popular.
Yeah.
And now it's like the fourth from the bottom. Pretty incredible.
Yeah, I think and we were getting into the sport around the same time, and in my scene, yeah, that was you shot production because that's where the heat was.
Yeah. Yes.
We weren't going to have an open debate. It was the tack optics of this sport.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Was production division, and limited had a lot of heat, but those tended to be seasoned competitors, and let's face it, older guys who were, they could afford the guns at that time. Yeah. So they tended to be the more veteran, experienced competitors, and there was a lot of those too. But like of all of us young bucks, like the production division was where you went for the heat. Like that's where the most athleticism was, for sure. And I mean, what's really interesting about this, because I've kind of digested this a little bit over the last couple of days, is all of these divisions, well, except for limited 10. All these divisions were major divisions in USPSA at some point in the sport. Okay, so there was a time that single stack guns ruled the roost. 45 cal single stack.
I agree on single stack, but do you consider revolver like one of those? Was there ever a time revolver was?
I think around about that single stack era. I mean, there was a revolver nationals that people would shoot. Jerry Micklick's heyday.
You know what? Now that you mention that, that's probably right. Because like when USPSA started, like the single stack was unproven technology, right? Like that's you don't want a semi-automatic, you want a revolver because it works every time. That kind of thing.
That mentality was definitely around at that time. Yeah. But like I feel like each one of these divisions has kind of had their time in the sun, and then they've kind of eclipsed as time has gone on. I mean, limited and open have been the two mainstays for the longest. I think that's where the competition is the heaviest. But what that third division has been a little bit more of a contemporary snapshot in time. And so it was production. It was PCC for a minute.
I disagree.
Now it's carry optics.
So I thought the same thing about PCC, but I think I have another slide here that I want to show if we're ready to move on. But I think the PCC craze was just that they were making the most noise because if you look at this slide here, so this is from a guy named Tim Yegla that I'm friends with on Facebook. He went and got some backup data from previous USPSA board numbers going back to 2017. And so you see, like, there you got 0 for carry optics and PCC in 2017 because it didn't exist. And it looks like, I guess, both of them were like provisionary in 2018, maybe. I don't know. Maybe they came into 2017. My history's not that great on that.
I don't remember.
If you look at that, like PCC exploded because it exploded from 0, right? Exploded from 0 to this line, and then it flatlined. Like this is it right here on the brown line. Like if you're listening to the podcast, you can watch this on YouTube as well, and you can see like it didn't really. It never was the primary. It never was first. And this one doesn't show, limb 10 or revolver.
It wasn't primary, but it was hot right now. And you got to remember that these stats are a reaction to what Three Gun Nation did the year prior. And for those 2 years, you couldn't get guys to shut up about their PCCs. Like,
yeah, but that's the thing. It's like the guy that owns the best Kia Rio out there. It's like, are there really that many Kia Rios out there?
Yeah. But I think it burned hot for a second, kind of like the M14. If you go back in the military side, like, I mean, it replaced the M1 Garand and then it was gone.
I think you're absolutely right on the M14. It burned hot for a second, but it didn't burn as hot as everyone thinks it did. Like, I think everyone's memory thinks it was hot, but if you look at this, like, it was still less participation than open. It never exceeded open. Whereas like the other divisions that you were talking about, AMAX, like look at open division, which is the green line, compared to production, which is the red line, in 2017. And then production has just gone down and down and down. It's almost the inverse of what carry optics is doing, which is the blue line. But then again, like you see that the yellow line, which is limited. And I'm sorry, I don't know what this number on the left axis is. It's a number, but I'm not sure what the number is. I assume it's participation, but it doesn't exactly say. So if you look at it, like it's pretty incredible to see that, those 3 divisions that you talked about, open, limited, and production, they were the hot stuff. Open has kind of stayed steady. It's seen a little bit of growth in the last 2 years, but I mean, it's an production division, and limited have definitely gone down.
Yeah. And it would be interesting, like, if this graphic, I'm not sure exactly when production became a division in USPSA, but if we could extend it back that far, if we could see that growth cycle too, I think you'd see a lot more parabolic growth.
Yeah, for sure.
On production, for sure. But yeah, I mean, the participation in carry optics has been astounding.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons that, I've been beating the modified division drum for the entirety of this year and most of last year. Is I look at these numbers and I really do think like that represents the future of the sport, and if you're talking like the percentage numbers, AMAX, you were looking this up earlier. So if revolver was, let's see, 1.19%, this is also a post from USPSA. The current membership count between or in October is almost 37,000. So like 1.19% is very little.
Right. But it's still a fairly large group of people. Like on that first graphic, you see there's 2,000 participants in revolver division. Well, 2,000 people want to participate in this division. They either want to pay $300 to go to a nationals, or they want to pay $20 a month to go to a club match every month of the year. I mean, that's still a representative group of people, and kind of what gets me wound up, because I kind of like some of these divisions on the bottom of the graphic here. Like, people are like, oh, well, that division needs to die. That division needs to die. Oh, well, guess what? It'll die when the revolver people decide it's done. All right. The people who are shooting limited guns aren't the ones who decide when the revolver guys are done.
So I agree on that. The thing to remember, though, is this is not 2,000 people. This is 2,000 matches, right? So if there's one guy that shot 10, that's going to take it down to...
As a percentage of membership, you're talking about 500 people. And if all 500 of those people, well, actually, it's more like 464, and say they all want to pay $200 to go to nationals, okay, well, that's $93,000.
I don't think that's exactly right. Like,
It's
so
not
I've been,
exactly right, but it's the point is that it's still, just because it's not a big group of people, it's still probably a group of people that we as an inclusive sport don't want to ignore.
mm-hmm. I'd agree there. Like, I don't think it at that level it deserves its own nationals, but um,
Oh no, neither does single stack currently at the moment. But if you put all of them together in a classic nationals, all right,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
you got yourself an event. So
Now Lim 10 though, that's dumb. I mean, there's no one shooting limited 10 that's like that's my gig. I get these big 2011 mags and I download them for limited 10.
well, that's not necessarily true. There's some guns that don't fit into single stack or production division, like a bushing barrel 1911. Sold a lot of those over the years. So when we start looking at some of these other divisions, I think if you're gonna say that this section of the participation needs to change, it's like then I have other questions like, does a production gun really need to hold 10 rounds? Are we excluding any viable pistols by increasing the capacity to 15? I don't think we are.
Yeah, on that one I totally agree. I mean,
know,
that's kind of out of the scope of what we're talking about here, but like I would 100% agree with you, and I think like Ben Barry has proposed like IPSC rules, which is 15 rounds.
Yep.
And that I feel like makes a lot more sense because that covers like almost every gun I can think of that is in that production type, right? Because like the argument there is, well, the Glock holds 17, but like a Glock 17 or a Glock 34 holds 17, but a Springfield XD holds 16. Just guessing, I have no idea what they hold, but that so that definitely could use some updating there. But I mean, like, there's all kinds of things that need updating. So if you talk about that, I think it's like Pandora's box because production guns, like they kind of strayed a little bit from the initial reason for that division.
A little bit. But like our buddy Jeremy Gresham, he advocates for a classic division where you essentially put production, single stack, and all those together, and then you recognize major, minor in that division. So you have different capacities, like as is currently in single stack. In single stack, if you shoot major, you can have 8 rounds. Minor, you can hold 10.
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of thing? You start to, because all these guns at one time were relevant in the sport and needed to be differentiated so that they could be competitive against each other. Or now, when they collectively represent less than 15% of the membership. Well, now it starts to make sense to maybe start to put them together.
Yeah.
But in Lim 10, so you look at a match like Classic Nationals, where you have only a few, you're drawing from less than 500 people for a nationals that are actually going to travel there. And, for a single stack, you're drawing from less than 1,000. And if they want to have a nationals, if they recognize Lim 10, they get the heat from limited division to show up to the match.
Yeah, see, that's a good point.
All right. Now people will take issue with that and say that we're artificially crowning a champion there. Oh, okay. But if on the major match side, if we needed those people to show up to have an event, I'm not going to throw shade at limited or Lim 10 if Lim 10 is the difference between having a classic nationals and not having a classic nationals.
Well,
people in the sport want to shoot those other guns. I would say let them shoot their other guns that one weekend a year.
Okay, so I think that power factor should be completely done away with too, because I think it's like an antiquated 45 because they don't make a 46 argument. But if you bring that up to like hardcore USPSA shooters, they really cling to my vis, my power sort of thing. It's really weird. I have no idea why. But so Dylan Easley had an interesting comment on this chart that Tim shared. And he said, I requested further info and found that a large chunk of limited was limited minor, nearly 1,100 more than limited major. I assume this is new and casual shooters who want to run their 9mm pistol without having to reload at 10-round intervals. Outside of open, major power factor is virtually dead. So I think he makes an excellent point there. And it also goes into what you were saying about production being hamstrung at 10 rounds. So it might be a case where if they remove that hamstring, then there'd be better participation in production rather than limited. But that's, again, outside of the scope of what I want to talk about here. But this guy right here has like the perfect my vis argument. But then Ken Nelson jumps in and he says to Dylan, correct, limited minor was probably new folks who don't own a zillion mags for their high cap plastic service pistol. That's my usual recommendation to first timers. Skipping because it gets into defensive use. And then he says if the remaining primary use for major power factor is testing technique, then make it hurt 180 power factor or whatever is safe, which doesn't sound like a nice Saturday morning. And then, yeah. The biggest point that Ken makes is, of course, maybe there's no need for a rule change. It looks like it's dying on its own.
Well, ultimately, that's what does a lot of it. And I can go either way on major minor. As a hardcore enthusiast, I enjoy the aspect of the strategic aspect of the game of major versus minor. If you could really do well one way or the other. So I think it can be an interesting component of the game. But like I was discussing in private messages about limited optics and what that should be. And somebody asked me if I thought we should recognize major minor and limited optics. And currently they recognize major minor in that sport. And so there has to be that. So the sport as a whole has to decide if they want to do major minor. But I do think it makes the sport artificially expensive right now, which is like I find the strategy of it interesting, but right now in 2022, I think it makes the sport artificially expensive. Ammunition is already expensive. It's already, and people have always complained about the cost of ammo forever, but it's when the sport already has that barrier of entry for participation of the cost of a consumable, to now incentivize using a more expensive consumable. If the goal is really participation, then using niche calibers probably needs to go away. I'm less passionate about running 40 out of town than I am 9 major. I don't think it's responsible of us as a shooting sport to encourage people to shoot a sport that is wildly outside of SAMI spec. I don't think that's a good idea. I think it's dumb.
Yeah, so I agree.
Application.
I agree on that, and then get rid of major power factor, and then it eliminates it. But that's
right.
Unfortunately, that's way outside of the scope of what we wanted to talk about here.
Yeah.
But the point is that like participation in carry optics is huge. I think people should pay attention to that because that is the industry, right? That is where the industry is at.
Right.
And so
like, look at my local club match that I show up to on a Tuesday. I look at this graphic and it's everybody shooting carry optics, a couple guys who have open guns shooting open guns, and then my club match has 20, 25 people show up. So there's those guys, and then there's maybe a handful of some of these other guys. There's maybe a couple people with production guns. There's maybe 1 or 2 people with single stack guns, depending on if that's me or not that night. There's maybe 1 or 2 people with legit limited guns. But like when I sit and think about it, at my local club, vast majority of people are showing up with carry optics guns. That is who is driving the sport right now. Those are the people that are paying $5 a week to USPSA to run the sport.